There's a quiet epidemic happening in organizations all across our country. And it's not burnout or turnover or even a lack of talent, though all three of those are present. It's actually what we consider underdeveloped leadership. We promote people because they perform, but we rarely prepare them to lead. We hand them a title, maybe a team, and hope they'll figure it out as they go. And for a while, they give it a go until the pressure hits. And that's when even the most capable people start to crack. Not because they aren't leaders or born leaders, but because they were never actually taught how to lead. The hard part is that underdevelopment doesn't always look like failure. Sometimes it hides behind busyness, temporary results, or phrases like it's just a busy season. But underneath the surface, it's showing up in quiet ways. The leader who's constantly tired, the team that's dependent instead of empowered, and the culture that's polite but not really honest. And what breaks my heart is that none of it is because people don't care. It's because we've built systems that reward performance but neglect development. We confuse past success with job performance and achievement with leadership readiness. And as a result, people keep getting promoted to their level of leadership incompetence. Not because they're hopeless, but because they've reached the edge of what their current skill set alone can carry. So we keep asking leaders to do things they've never been taught to do. Lead through pressure, navigate conflict, build trust, create culture, develop other people. And then we label them as failures when their intuition just isn't enough.
Ooh, it's so true. I think this may be one of the most relatable episodes we've ever done, because I don't know of a leader out there who has not experienced this reality where people are good. Some of us, myself included, are good at what we do. We were good at our job skills. We excelled in certain areas. And oftentimes for some of us, it included a mixture of charisma and
intelligence and different skills. Yeah.
All of those things. And so what happened? We did so good at our job that they gave us more jobs. They put us in charge of other people. And suddenly we quickly realized that, what made me a good accountant, what made me a good salesperson, what made me a good marketer doesn't actually equip me to lead. Those are two very different skill sets. And it's almost like our organizations out there don't realize.
That's right.
What makes somebody a good employee does not make them a good leader. But here's the thing. No one comes out of the womb knowing how to lead intuitively. They don't know how to coach, how to communicate, how to build trust, how to develop others. And when we as a society buy into the idea that leadership is innate, right? That some people are either born with it or they're not. We do two things. One, we let people off the hook for their own development.
Yep.
And we let organizations off the hook for investing in the growth of their people. The truth is, anyone can learn how to lead. It's literally, Eric, what you and I do day in and day out is teach people how to lead. It's just that most people have never been shown how to do it. What do we do about this, Eric?
Yeah. The first thing I would say right off the top is we work with so many organizations that have achieved some level of success. Yeah. And we are brought in at the point at where people are beginning to butt up against their lack of leadership ability, right? So we build a business and we build all these divisions and teams, and we can get away for quite some time as long as money's coming into the bank account. But over time, what we realize is people are not operating well. Individuals are frustrated. There's high turnover. There's a toxic culture. There's poor communication. And this is the point where people begin to realize, you know what? There's something missing. The truth is most leaders are underdeveloped because most organizations confuse time on the job with growth. They think time in a role equals development or leadership development. but experience doesn't automatically make you better. It just makes you familiar. Let's pause for a second and just consider this interesting parallel. Many of us have gotten together with somebody else, and then we have kids and we build a family, and it's just expected. Just because we had kids, just because our family is growing in numbers, that now we know how to parent. If we think of parenting and leadership as almost synonymous parallel realities with very similar skills between the two, it's like, okay, well, who was trained to be a parent? Most of us feel woefully under-equipped to parent, even though we were parented,
Yes,
for
that's
better
right.
and for worse. And even though now we're suddenly thrust into the responsibility of parenting, it doesn't necessarily mean that at any point we picked up the fundamental essential skills to leading a family or household well. And I think we're finding this very similar phenomena within most teams and organizations. You can be hitting
Mhm.
every target and still be shrinking as a leader. Underdevelopment hides behind things like our ability to fake our leadership. I got this together. Don't worry about it. The team's going to be okay,
Right.
until it isn't. It looks like competence under pressure. It's real leadership looks like competence until the pressure begins to build up. I said that wrong. Let me say it one more time. We fake it until the pressure builds up.
Yeah.
Challenges and underdeveloped aspects of our leadership are suddenly exposed. And again, that's oftentimes where we get called in. And that's when even the most well-intentioned people start slipping into survival mode. Gosh, I
Mhm.
am so painfully familiar with this experience. We start over functioning, micromanaging, or just withdrawing, not because we're bad people, but because we don't have the tools, we don't have the skills, we don't have the capacity to sustain good leadership under increasing responsibility and pressure.
Yeah, it's so true. And like you said, we don't notice underdeveloped leadership when everything's going smooth. Or like you said earlier, when money's coming in, when everything seems calm, when things are up and to the right. Underdeveloped leadership can fly under the radar. It's only when something breaks, the
Yeah.
money stops coming in, a tough conversation needs to be had, a shifting culture, a high pressure season, people on your team that are experiencing all sorts of dysfunction and causing problems. That's when we realize that the foundation was not as strong as we thought. And by then, though, the cost is already showing up in burnout, in turnover, and mistrust. Right now, we're trying to backfill a problem that has already been created.
Mm. It's interesting. I often remind leaders, because when people bring us in and we begin to take them through our training process, leading them through our leadership operating system, training them, their teams, it's like it only takes a few weeks, maybe a couple of months before they start kind of sharing with us behind closed doors, like, where's this stuff been? Why was I never trained in this? And I often remind them, like, hey, what leadership class did you take in high school? What leadership class did you take in college or graduate studies? And people go through an entire MBA and spend loads of time and money on a degree that oftentimes leaves them woefully under-equipped in the essential, fundamental leadership skills that are required to be successful in any context of life, quite frankly, where we have responsibility for other human beings, whether that's in our household or in business or in any other context, government. And so it's just important for our leaders, I mean, our listeners, to hear this right now. Like, you're not alone. If you're feeling that sneaking suspicion of, gosh, I feel underskilled, ill-equipped for the responsibilities that I have for other people, you're not alone, because our culture has not caught up to the desperate need that every human being should be trained in these basic skills, which is why part of our mission at Empower Coaching is to put this leadership operating system in the hands of as many human beings as possible, because we do believe that without these basic skills, we're headed toward just constant frustration and burnout.
Right.
So let me just say this. At Empower, we believe leadership isn't something you're born with. So, like, I love that show Mythbusters, right? Where they take these kind of preconceived ideas that are really popular in culture, and then they either prove them right or they dispel them. And very often we don't even realize we bought into this myth, what's a lie that now begins to shape our narrative of who we are and how we should engage the world around us. And I think that's exactly what's happened with leadership. Some people are born with it, some people are not. It's not true. we're gonna bust that myth right here, right now. There's no such thing as a natural born leader. There are people with certain qualities that we associate with leadership, extroversion, right? People who like to talk a lot. But I would say more often than not, it's the people who are natural manipulators, narcissists, people who like to be in control, people who like to tell everybody else what to do. Those
Yeah.
are people that I think end up in higher roles and responsibilities, but that's not necessarily leadership. Leadership is something that we have to build. And guess what? Every one of us can develop this core skill set that will allow us to take our leadership to new heights. Every leader has a next best version of themselves waiting to emerge. And development is simply the process of learning to operate from a new playbook instead of an old one. The problem is most people never get taught how to do that. That's why we refer to
Right.
ourselves as a how-to business. They get feedback that says, be more confident or communicate better.
Yeah.
Or get your team in order, or why can't you achieve these things better? But no one actually shows them how. It's like assume that people will just figure it out.
You know how to do that? Sure.
Come on, just watch a YouTube video, just read that book. I just gave you that newest leadership book. And why doesn't that translate into into the way you're behaving? So they keep trying harder. We all know this feeling. We're just spinning our wheels, trying harder instead of actually intentionally developing. We believe every leader can learn to lead more effectively with more clarity, more composure, and more consistency, because leadership isn't about personality. It isn't about your natural wiring. It's not even about your background or your upbringing, thankfully. Otherwise, I would have been disqualified a long time ago. But leadership is really about the first step into awareness.
Yep.
And then learning to practice the particular behaviors that cultivate who we are as a better leader.
That's right. And that's what I love about what we get to do. And what I hope our listeners are hearing in this episode is, one, as you said, they're not alone, but two, that there is hope. If you are feeling very overwhelmed, very disqualified, very underdeveloped, and it's a constant source of shame, what I want you to hear is that growth is not reserved for a certain kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Being a leader is not about being charismatic or extroverted or about having, as you said, that perfect background, whatever that means. It's about learning first to lead yourself well. And that is something that anybody can learn how to do. Anybody can develop in if they have intention and support.
I love it. This is an important kind of mindset shift for our listeners to consider. Once you stop trying to prove yourself and instead give yourself toward an intentional developmental process, everything changes. Your confidence, your personal culture, your capacity to lead more effectively, to influence and impact others in a beneficial way. Those things dramatically change once we have a path that we can get on that helps us to intentionalize our developmental journey. And that's what development does. It gives you access to a better version of yourself, and it unlocks more of your potential and therefore your team's potential as well. And so obviously we have a high value for where does the rubber hit the road in this conversation that we're having. So let's share a couple of stories from our journey that just will give our listeners a peek into behind the scenes of what does this look like and what does this look like for us?
I can share a story from my own developmental experience where out of college, I had my master's. I got hired to work at a church and I was working in youth ministry. So I had certain leadership responsibilities, but they were minimal in scope, right? I didn't have a ton of leadership responsibilities, but what I did well. So I communicated well. I was an extrovert. I had a ton of charisma. I got along with other people, which like goes a long way in a lot of spaces, right? If you can ingratiate yourself with people, guess what? People start to like you. And I performed well in my job responsibilities. Our small youth group was growing. We had tons of fun events. The media looked good. My very small team operated well. And as I'm sure our listeners can appreciate, maybe you've lived this yourself. If you are good at your job, usually they will give you somebody else's job too. They'll give you more responsibilities. And so I very quickly, at a very young age, got promoted into higher levels of leadership where now I'm responsible for other departments. I have people that are reporting to me. I have to interact and lead not just teenagers, but adults, which, by the way, is far worse in my opinion. Some people claim that teenagers are hard, adults are way worse. And what happened is that I very quickly realized that I was out of my depths. I had outkicked my coverage. I was waiting constantly in my office for somebody to knock on the door and be like, who told you that you could be here? You are not qualified, and all of these things are falling apart. I constantly felt like I was trying to scotch tape everything together so that the optics, even though inside I was drowning, the optics from the outside looked like, oh, she's got it together. I had nothing together. And it was very scary and isolating time. And I was dealing with a ton of imposter syndrome. And I'm sure that there are some of us out here right now who are listening to this who can relate to that experience of being a high performer. I was a high achiever, and that's why I got promoted. And now suddenly I was at my level of incompetence.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us who are high achievers, high performers, we do not like operating at or slightly below that, what we call that radical minimum standard. We like to exceed it, and we are accustomed to exceeding it. And so when I was faced with a reality of not only not exceeding it, but falling below my own expectations, it was a very difficult season. And guess what? Nobody was coming around to say, hey, Dawn, let me help you learn how to lead other people. Hey, Dawn, we just put you in charge of multiple other departments that now have to report to you. Let me teach you how to do that. Nobody ever came around to do that. I was just expected to figure it the heck out. And I didn't, frankly. What are your feelings?
And it's interesting because your story is so familiar to myself personally in my journey, but it's also familiar in that it resonates with so many stories I've heard from other leaders.
That's right.
And obviously you're intelligent and you're driven and you're a high achiever. And so you're going to stumble and fumble your way into some of it. You're going to figure some of it out. You're going to read enough books that you're going to get some ideas about how to run a meeting and what to do, what not to do. You're going to develop some sense of what does it mean to lead well and how do you build a team, or an organization that can operate well. But the reality is, it's like most of us feel like we're just grasping at all these different insights and ideas that we accumulate from books and YouTube videos and podcasts and conferences. And we're kind of smooshing it all together and hoping, hey, that is what's going to help me to excel, which is interesting. Like, it's scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because in most professions, if that's the way surgeons tackled a surgery, that's the way that professional sports teams tackled a game. If that's the way that a lawyer tackled a court case, we'd be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, dude, didn't you learn a fundamental system and process of doing this? Haven't you spent years developing these particular foundational skills so that you can now achieve more and more? Like, the problem is when you don't have a coherent system to build on, everything feels like you're just creating a patchwork of ideas to try and get through the day or the week or the quarter or the year, which is incredibly frustrating. And I'm just throwing that out because to juxtapose it with what sets our coaching business apart from so many other coaching organizations is that we have created a leadership operating system. It is a system.
Yeah.
It is a set of foundational tools and principles and practices that allow for us to feel like, you know what, I have ground to stand on. And yes, I'm going to develop and get better with these skills over the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years. I'm no longer wondering, what does it mean to be a great leader?
Yeah. And I think that the worst part is that the whole time, and this resonates with so many leaders that we talk to, like they have such a similar story. the worst part is they're constantly waiting to get found out that they're not qualified. And so what does that lead to? It leads to self-protection. Instead of for most people having that lead to, oh, I want to figure it out. Let me learn how to let me seek out these different resources. No, it leads us to want to protect ourselves at all costs, which is a terrible leadership standpoint. Nobody wants to be leading from that place.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've talked about two little stories. One is one of the clients that we've worked with now for a little while, when they invited us in to do an initial assessment and just begin to take a peek underneath the hood of their business and to figure out what was going on, because they were up against all kinds of frustrations. After working with the president of this company for a short while, they confided in me, Eric, I just spent almost 2 years going through a high-level master's program in leadership at a prominent university in our country. And he said, I can genuinely tell you, after the first couple of months of working with you, all I keep asking myself is, why didn't we learn this stuff in this program? The stuff that you guys at Empower Coaching are bringing, where was this? How can I spend that much time and money on a high-level degree in the area of leadership, and these fundamental skills were never touched upon, never discussed, never broached? And so again, that's more for our listeners to encourage them. Some of the most successful businesses and leaders of those businesses that we've worked with feel just like the rest of us. I feel under-equipped. I feel like I'm afraid someone's going to find me out. I don't know how to get to the next level of success in this business, because somehow I think we all know intuitively that the breakthrough out there begins inside of us. Like if I want something to change in my business, it's got to change in me. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what that pathway looks like. I don't know how to make this journey. It's interesting. I really enjoy spending time with friends on the golf course. I joined a new club recently, and I was playing with a group of gentlemen that I was not familiar with. And after the round, oftentimes we go upstairs and have some food and discuss the golf and how we did. And we all moan and groan about how well or not well we played and blah, blah, blah. It's the closest thing I think that we as men have to gossip. So we're having this conversation, and one of the gentlemen says, hey, Eric, I'm curious. You told me on the course that you have an executive coaching business. You work with leaders. You help them achieve the next levels of breakthrough and success. I'm curious. Tell me more about that. And so he asked a lot of questions. What I also remember is he was asking this question. There's another younger gentleman at the table who we played with, who had ordered food to go because he had to get home to his wife and small children. And so he was just getting to go order, and he just listened in to the first 15 minutes of our conversation while he was waiting for the food. And then I noticed that while I'm talking to this other gentleman, the food shows up, it's on the table in a bag, and this young man just stays there. And I keep thinking, like, I'm talking to this guy over here to my left, but this guy to my right, who should be leaving now to go take that food home, he did not move.
Yeah.
And so at some point, like 30 minutes go by, and I'm like, hey, so I don't mean to be pushy, but didn't you get that food to go because you got to take it home to your wife and kids? He's like, oh my gosh, you're right. I just couldn't leave. And I was like, oh, well, what's going on? He said, Eric, everything you're talking about, he said, I feel like I was so afraid to not hear what you were saying. I said, I don't understand. Can you just quickly explain? He said, I'm a doctor and I have a specialty in this particular area. And he said, and I'm only like, this guy's only 32 years old, and he was a few months earlier put in charge of overseeing a whole division of doctors who specialize in this one area for this medical practice. And he said, Eric, I'm really good in the area of specialty of doctoring that I have spent years studying and researching and practicing in. He said, but all of a sudden I've been thrust into a role and a responsibility, and I feel like completely out of my depths.
Yeah.
It's almost as if they're assuming that just because I'm good at doctoring, I'm going to be good at leading
Doctors.
And how often do we hear this? Like you said it earlier, right? We're great at lawyering. We're great at medicine. We're great at engineering. We're great at sales. We're great at marketing. We're great at whatever it is, plumbing or construction. And because we're competent in those areas, the assumption is they would make a great leader at a next level. Mm-hmm. And this young man just began to tell me how overwhelmed he felt, and that he's been like, 2 years, 3 years into this program, and he's like, Eric, I feel like I'm so afraid to not hear what you were saying. I said, I don't understand. Can you just quickly explain? He said, and I'm only like, this guy's only 32 years old, and he was a few months scouring the internet and doing all the chat research he can on what does it mean to be a good leader, and how do I oversee this team, and how do I develop clear objectives and goals, and he's most days I feel like I'm herding cats because these are a bunch of doctors. They all think they know what they're talking about, so they don't want to listen to me.
Mhm.
He's just lamenting an experience that is so common for so many people. And so, of course, I said, dude, let me walk you out to your car. I'm going to give you my newest book. It's got our leadership operators. And I'm like, dude, just read some of it. And if it resonates, let me know however we can help you and serve you, because that's our passion.
Mhm.
Feels like an injustice
It does.
as advanced as we are in all of our technologies in this country, as many advantages as we have in so many other areas, and yet we are still woefully underdeveloped
Yeah.
in our understanding of leadership and what it means for people to unlock more of their leadership ability. The fact that we still live in these old lies that some people are natural born leaders and some people aren't. The
Mhm.
fact that we still believe that just because somebody's really good in their particular skill of whatever their industry is, that's going to make them a good leader of a team or of even an organization. And how many small businesses, somebody's a great plumber, they started playing business. Somebody's great at fitness, they start an online fitness program business. Somebody's great and they start a business and are suddenly face to face with the fact that as the team grows, as the business grows, they have never really been trained
That's
in
right.
foundational leadership skills. And I just think it's an injustice that we're trying to rectify, not because we have all the answers and we're the only leadership development organization out there, but because I'm 1,000% convinced that there are not many organizations offering a simple, clear how-to system of unlocking the better leader inside of each one of us. And it should be, in my estimation, it should be part of our development through high school, middle school, college, graduate studies. It should be a part of every new employee's onboarding process. Every time somebody's promoted, this should just be the starting point. I know I'm getting on my soapbox, but I feel like I had to live through the inadequacy of leadership development in our country and culture. You've had to do it, and everybody else we've ever worked with, for the most part,
Right. Yeah.
is living through that deficiency. And I just think, man, part of our role in this season is just to throw that flag up and say, guys, that's not okay. It doesn't have to be that way. And I just want to tell our listeners, it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey of career or business or what your role and responsibilities are. The reality is every single one of us needs this.
That's right. And I love that example that you shared, because here we have a highly specialized doctor who has done decades of training, right? And yet he is still faced with the same exact reality that we encounter time and time again, that these highly specialized doctors above him are like, oh, you're good at that very specific thing, so now we're going to have you lead people who also do that very specific thing. It's like, it doesn't make sense when you think about it. And yet it is the quid pro quo that everybody experiences in their profession, in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Well, hey, listen, we know we're not going to solve all this overnight.
Dang it.
And we believe that small steps, consistent steps over a long period of time lead to great breakthroughs and transformation. So let me just say this to our listeners, pause and slow down for a second and say, this is not an all or nothing issue. It's not black and white. This is not figured out overnight. This is not read our book and any of that stuff. And like tomorrow, you're going to be the leader that you wish you were. But I will say this, we want to offer small things that we can begin to engage with that will over time lead to significant growth and development. So here's what I want to encourage our listeners toward this week. Ask this simple question. Where in your leadership are you running into the same challenges over and over? Right? We're going around the same mountain over and over. Those are oftentimes indicators where we're running to the edge of our capacity, our skill set or ability. And we're either going to see that as an obstacle to fight over or to withdraw from, or an opportunity to learn and grow. And so where are we relying on what's always worked in the past, what got us here,
Question. Yeah.
instead of stretching into something new? We know the old adage, what got us here will not get us there. When we're experiencing those indicators of constant or regular, consistent frustration, we can see those as an opportunity to learn and grow. When we start paying attention to these moments, the conversations that drain us, the patterns that keep repeating, the parts of leadership that feel heavier than they should. That's where growth is inviting us to do something different. And that's not criticism. Like, we're so afraid of that kind of feedback,
That's right.
but it's direction. It's saying, hey, here's a place where if you press in intentionally, you will see growth and development. And it's not about a massive overhaul. We've already said that. It's about one small conscious shift toward the next version of ourselves. So here's just a few things that I want to encourage us to think about in terms of practical, like just some baby steps, because we're going to be taking this conversation deeper over the next number of podcast sessions. So we're just from the first step in the pool of this conversation. We'll get to the deep end.
Into the shallow.
We're ankle deep right now. We don't want to just plunge ourselves head into the deep end. Number one, try to identify an area of your leadership that maybe there are indicators reflecting back to us that there are regular frustrations, tensions, discouragements, confusions, areas where we feel like, I don't know how to get the breakthrough here. And just to say, am I willing to own that may be an area of leadership for me to grow? That's revealing. You don't even have to know what leadership skill you have to develop, but just being willing to say, probably an indicator that I've got some room to grow.
Right.
Number two, this is really good. Identify someone in your life or in your business or in any area of your life that seems to be further down the road than you in that particular area, and imitate them. Right? We say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Why? Because clearly somebody's figured out something that we haven't. So don't be afraid to identify those people and say, what if I started trying to do a little bit more of what they do? And here's the thing, don't be afraid to ask somebody. Find people that are older, more mature, people that are further down the road that seem to have figured something out, and just say, hey, can I just pick your brain for a few minutes? I keep running into this challenge. I'm not sure how to run my team. I'm not sure how to hold people accountable for showing up on time. I'm not sure how to get people to show up with the reports that I've asked them to. I'm not sure how to resolve this ongoing feud between different team members.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is, do you have any thoughts? Have you found anything that's worked for you? And then let them share and then imitate those ideas. And then if you really want to accelerate your growth across a fundamental scope of leadership development and transformation, then of course, find a great coach. We'd love to help you out in any way we can. And obviously we're just so busy putting up every resource we can on our online membership platform, in our books, in our master classes, in our podcast, and our on and on and on and on, because our mission again is to put this operating system into the hands of as many people as humanly possible. And we want your help.
And I want to remind our listeners that potentially the most freeing part of this is that you do not have to fix everything at once. This is not about waking up and becoming the perfect leader. This is about starting to notice where you've stopped growing or where you're bumping up against some obstacles, and just simply identifying them, because awareness by itself is already movement in the right direction. And here's what I want to remind you. If that realization, if what kind of that question brings to light, if it stings a little bit, that's okay. It's all right if that's like embarrassing, or if you feel like, man, I should have figured this out already. How am I still here? That's okay. That discomfort is just clarity trying to get our attention. So don't run from it. Lean into it, because that's usually the place that the next level, that next best version of you is waiting, is right up against that pressure point.
I love it. We have a little saying, you can't change what you can't see. So
Right.
ignoring these challenges, avoiding these growth edges is really in nobody's best interest. But once you name it, you can start the process of intentionally engaging it. And that's what leads to breakthroughs and progress. And that's where real leadership begins for every single one of us, right? None of us have arrived. We're not all fully realized and all of our potentials unlocked. Even as a team, we're constantly helping each other identify our growth edges so that we can continue to take our leadership to next levels. Dear listener, we love you. We're so grateful. We do this for you. We do this in part for us. If I'm being honest, like, we have to remind ourselves all the time of the things that we coach others in, because we're committed to leading in this way as well. If this episode hits close to home, share it with another leader who might be carrying more than they feel capable of right now. The truth is, none of us outgrow the need for development, but we can all learn to lead through pressure with more clarity and confidence.
Yeah. And if you're ready to go deeper, if you're ready to jump into more, join us for our next monthly masterclass. Head to mpwrcoaching.com/masterclass to save your seat. And you can also find the link in the show notes.
Oh, and we so badly want you to show up to that masterclass. We want to see your faces. If you're one of our regular podcast listeners, we would love to meet you face to face in that masterclass. There's a reason why we use Zoom and why we don't do it as a webinar, so we can actually see people who show up. You may choose not to reveal your image, and that's okay too. But we have this huge audience, right? We have over 100,000 downloads on this podcast, which is just unbelievable. But gosh, we want to get to know some of you. So,
And let me add this.
yes,
Feel free to reach out to us on social media. Guess what? That's us. We're going to respond to you, me right here. So if you have a question, if you want to chat, go deeper, just be like, hey, I'm listening to the podcast. Reach out on our socials and we will get back to you.
we would love that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun? So we have 100,000 downloads on the podcast, over 100,000 now. We passed that a while back. Wouldn't it be interesting if all those people that followed our podcast, followed us on social media? Why? Because our social media, my wife hates it. She's like, when's the last time you posted a picture of me and the kids? I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm just so desperate to serve our audience that like our social medias oftentimes get really filled up with all the stuff that we're just trying to give away for free. Maybe that's a little incentive. Follow us. We'd love to communicate with you through those channels, and anything we can do to put the things that have transformed our life and our leadership into your hands, we want to do. Next week, we're going to continue in this series on underdeveloped leadership, talking about why leaders get stuck and don't know it. We'll unpack the habits and mindsets that keep good leaders underdeveloped and how to grow past them. Until next time,